so. So my name is Jeremiah, and I'm a prophet of the Lord, and I've got a word from the Lord for you this morning. If you are tender-hearted, and I know some of you are, just get yourself ready, because this word from the Lord is kind of hard. I have seen the glories of Jerusalem, the city of David, the jewel on the hill. And I have seen the holy city set upon by the army of Babylon and destroyed. This word from the Lord, I've lived these words. It's the word of the Lord, but I have lived these words. This is the word of the Lord. It is life-giving, and it is good, and it is recorded. This is the word of the Lord. I am the man who has seen affliction by the rod of the Lord's wrath. He has driven me away and made me walk in darkness rather than light. Indeed, he has turned his hand against me again and again, all day long. He has made my skin and my flesh grow old, and has broken my bones. He has besieged me and surrounded me with bitterness and hardship. He has made me dwell in darkness, like those long dead. He has walled me in so I cannot escape. He has weighed me down with chains. Even when I call out or cry for help, he shuts out my prayer. He has barred my way with blocks of stone. He has made my paths crooked. Like a bear lying in wait, like a lion in hiding. He dragged me from the path and mangled me, and left me without help. He drew his bow and made me the target for his arrows. He pierced my heart with arrows from his quiver. I became the laughing stock of all my people. They mock me in song all day long. He has filled me with bitter herbs and sated me with gall. He has broken my teeth with gravel. He has trampled me in the dust. I have been deprived of peace. I have forgotten what prosperity is. So I say, my splendor is gone, and all that I had hoped from the Lord. I remember my affliction and my wandering. The bitterness and the gall, I well remember them. And my soul is downcast within me. Yet this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. I say to myself, the Lord is my portion, therefore I will wait for him. The Lord is good to those whose hope is in him, to the one who seeks him. It is good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. It is good for a man to bear the yoke while he is young. Let him sit alone in silence, for the Lord has laid it on him. Let him bury his face in the dust. There may yet be hope. Let him offer his cheek to one who would strike him, and let him be filled with disgrace. For men are not cast off from the Lord forever. Though he brings grief, he will show compassion. So great is his unfailing love. People, hear this last one. For he does not willingly bring affliction or grief to the children of men. The Lord does not willingly bring affliction or grief to the children of men. This is the word of the Lord. I remember going up to Jerusalem when I was a boy with my mom and my dad and my sisters and my brother. I really liked it. I liked taking a trip from my hometown to the big city. I liked not having to go to school for a week. And I liked the food. My mom really kicked out the stops and made the food extra special during those festival weeks. The big meetings in the courts of the temple were kind of strange to me then. All the sacrifice, I never really understood why all that was necessary. But the annual feasts, Passover, the Feast of Weeks, the Feast of Tabernacles, they were something to look forward to. Things are different now. First, the Assyrian army in my grandpa's time came and plundered northern Israel and took many of the people captive up to Assyria. And then in my lifetime, the Babylonian army came and laid siege to and conquered the southern kingdom, including Jerusalem, and took many of my brothers north into exile. I warned them, but they wouldn't listen to me. But let me tell you about something that happened to me when I was a teenager, when the city of David still stood strong. It's hard to explain. I just started to understand some things. It happened one night during Passover. I was 17 years old. I'd come to the temple with some of my friends. My parents were convinced that I was trustworthy and not such a ragamuffin, that we would behave adequately. And when the worship service ended, my friends were ready to go, but I just felt like I wanted to stay. I hadn't really felt like that before. You know, the service was over, let's go have fun. It's like the service was over, and I just felt like I wanted to stay. So my friends left, and I just started talking to God. I was just there in the temple courts, and I I just started talking to God about the stuff I was worried about and some of the stuff that I dreamed of and that girl that I kind of liked at the synagogue. And it's like the Lord was right there listening to me. It's like I was talking to Him about stuff that mattered to me, and it's like He was right there listening to me. And I could just talk, and He was there, and it's like I never wanted it to end. Has that ever happened to you? And by the time I came around to my senses, I looked around and it was dark already. And the only people left in the temple courts were just, 5 or 6 people, and most of them were Levites who looked kind of tired after several days of this. And they were just cleaning up after the day's services and festivities. But I just lingered there with the Lord, and I somehow grew up that day. I just feel like I grew up that day. At least I turned some kind of corner in my relationship with Yahweh. It's like he no longer was my dad's God. It's like Yahweh was now my God. I started to understand that being one of the Lord's people, it means something. I started to understand that the festivals were more than just a vacation. They were a sacred gathering of God's people that I was privileged to be part of. I started to understand that Jerusalem was more than just a beautiful city. That it was actually where God dwelt among His people. And He was just there to meet with us in solidarity and shalom. Sorry, I didn't mean to get so personal. It's just that festivals were just kind of normal and on our calendar and something that we did every year, and they just became something a whole lot more. Yahweh is my God, and He always will be. My mom, she carried a little prayer book when we went to the festivals. Dad was the soul of our family, but Mom was the heart. And Mom had this little book. It was more than prayers. It had poems. It had songs in it, psalms. And so as we were traveling up to the festival, Mom would just break out her little book, even though we knew a lot of the words, and she'd read a psalm to us, and then we'd sing a song to one of the tunes that we'd learned in the festival worship services, and sometimes we'd even make up our own tunes. It felt kind of sacrilegious, but we just made up our own songs and we'd sing. It was really kind of cool. But a couple of the psalms in this little book my mom had, they didn't make much sense to me. It's like they seemed just negative, like depressing. It's like, why do we even have to talk about that kind of stuff, much less sing songs about it? But as I got older, I started to understand a little bit, because these songs became somehow familiar to my soul as I began to experience what life was like outside of my family. I struggled with one psalm in particular, and I'd like to read it for you. It begins strong, but it ends kind of sad. I'll read it for you. I lift up my eyes to you whose throne is in heaven. As the eyes of slaves look to the hand of their master, so the eyes of a maid look to the hand of her mistress. So our eyes look to the Lord our God till He shows us His mercy. Have mercy on us, O Lord, have mercy on us. For we have endured much contempt. We have endured much ridicule from the proud, much contempt from the ignorant. This is the word of the Lord. Can you relate to that? Enduring ridicule and contempt? I can, more than I wish that I could. You know, when I started speaking for God, I never asked to be a prophet. The Lord just told me I was one. And when I started speaking for Him, some people quit liking me. And it wasn't just my Canaanite neighbors, which you would expect, but it was some of my Israelite brothers. They started scorning me and making fun of me, and I felt on the outskirts of friendships that I used to be part of because I was just speaking what the Lord told me to speak. And people accused me. They called me names. Goody two-shoes, Sour Sam, Sad Brad, Holier than thou. And then the one that's really got a barb on it, hypocrite. Man, that stung. Bites pretty deep. But you know what? Contempt comes and goes. It's only temporary. And that contempt has just made me lean into Yahweh as my God. When I feel belittled or looked down on by people, it hurts me. I don't think I'm being dramatic to say it breaks my heart. But it makes me lean into Yahweh as my God. Because when no one else understands, Yahweh does. And Yahweh is merciful. Even though the temple is no more, I can still lift up my eyes to the Lord, and He sees me. When I'm in distress, I can call out to the Lord, and He answers me. And sometimes when I'm just leaning into Yahweh with my heart bare, I can hear His voice saying, Jeremiah, well done. You are a good and faithful child, a good and faithful servant. Well done. He is on His throne in heaven. He sees me. He hears me. And He answers me. and He calls me His child. Can I leave you with 4 things? I'm not only a prophet, I'm a teacher. First, when you seek the Lord, especially when you feel the sting of contempt, He forms mercy in your heart. When you seek the Lord for mercy, He forms mercy in your heart. And that's a blessed state. Secondly, this mercy from Yahweh that gets formed in your heart, it triumphs over judgment. When we show mercy to others, it brings light into darkness. It dispels darkness when we show mercy to people. And they can more clearly see God in the light. And you do that by showing other people mercy. 3, other people's contempt of you does not go unredeemed. The Lord has a way, I can't explain it, it just is. He redeems the very thing that tastes to you so bitter. And fourthly, I can't quite explain this either. Others' contempt for Messiah will not go unredeemed. Isaiah, I learned so much from him. He prophesied to the northern kingdom about 100 years before the Lord made me a prophet. But I learned from Isaiah that the Anointed One will come. The Messiah will come to Israel. And He will be ridiculed. And He'll be pierced for our sins. Mine and the Babylonians. And He will bring healing and righteousness and peace to all nations in fulfillment of His promise to Abraham. All nations will be blessed through Him. Because He will be willing to suffer ridicule and shame from others. I am a man of God. Should I not be willing to suffer some ridicule and shame too? Have I known the sting of ridicule, of other people's contempt? I have. But it's never been lost on Yahweh. Contempt from the proud is real, but it's passing. Mercy from the Lord is more real, and it lasts forever. When you feel the sting of contempt, you can count on God's mercy. If you've been sleeping, and I don't judge you, wake up now, or at least open your ears. I have 6 words that capture this message. Contempt is temporary. Mercy is everlasting. I am Jeremiah, God's prophet, whether I like it or not. And this is the word of the Lord.